Attention all operators on countdown 1. This is the final go, no go for flight 2 of Starship. Again, our T0 is at 7 a.m. Central. Raptor 1.
Go.
Raptor 2.
Go.
Stage 1.
Go.
Stage 2.
Go.
Copy, go for flight. Clock is rolling. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff.
Hola, ¿qué tal, comunidad de Spaceport? Buenas noches. Hoy es lunes 12 de enero. Feliz inicio de año 2026. Estamos iniciando la tercera temporada de nuestro podcast Charlas Spaceport MX. Este es el episodio 1 de este año 2026. Quiero agradecerles por estos 2 años que hemos estado transmitiendo, que hemos tenido una cantidad impresionante de talentos internacionales para proyectar qué está pasando en la industria del espacio. Y bueno, hoy para iniciar esta tercera temporada tenemos invitada de lujo de nivel internacional, Shelli Brunswick, escritora, futurista, una líder reconocida en la industria porque ha podido intersectar en muchos sectores. Vamos a hablar sobre su libro, vamos a hablar qué está pasando en el espacio en Latinoamérica y cómo todas estas lecciones aprendidas desde una industria que es de alta exigencia, que nos ponen altos niveles de incertidumbre y estrés, nos pueden enseñar mejores formas de habitar esta tierra, de aprovechar tecnología, pero también cómo como personas tomamos estas lecciones, aprendemos de ellas y las aplicamos en un liderazgo activo, accionable, que realmente se hace, no se dice. Y bueno, esta charla va a ser totalmente en inglés. Espero que se queden. Vamos a hacer una traducción después. Más adelante pueden poner ustedes la traducción en YouTube. Vamos a estar transmitiendo por TikTok. Vamos a tenerlo también en Facebook, Instagram y después lo van a poder ver también por LinkedIn para que puedan tener la traducción. Pero quédense. Esta industria requiere que también tengamos habilidades lingüísticas. Entonces vayamos practicando nuestro inglés. Hagan muchas preguntas y comenzamos.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Welcome, Spaceport community. Good evening and welcome again to Charlas Spaceport MX. Today, we want to start with a powerful yet deeply human idea. Space is not just a place we go to. It's a way of thinking. In a world defined by uncertainty, complexity, and constant change, the space mindset helps us to see entire systems, make decisions with perspective, and lead with intention and responsibility. This conversation is not about technology or space exploration. It's about leadership, the future, and purposeful action. Today, I'm truly honored to be joined by a woman who has dedicated her career to helping leaders, organizations, and communities to navigate complexity, spark innovation, and lead with long-term vision in a world in transition. Shelli Brunswick. Shelli is a global keynote speaker and author whose work is grounded in what she calls the space mindset, a powerful way of thinking rooted in curiosity, system awareness, and purposeful action. Through this lens, she bridges leadership, professional development, entrepreneurship, and emerging technologies, translating lessons from the global space ecosystem into practical insights that audiences can apply immediately. Known for her engaging, story driven style, Shelley delivers talks that ignite imagination, inspire action, and equip leaders with the clarity and momentum to move forward. She's the author of the What Space Got to Do with It, a book series, including an interstellar guide to success, where she introduces a leadership framework built of four pillars: leadership, awareness, access, and action. Whether on a global stage, in executive forums, or working with the next generation of leaders, Shelley equips people to think bigger, act with intention, and shape what's next. On a personal note, Shelley is also a friend, a mentor, and leader who truly uplifts and celebrates talent. That has certainly been my own experience, and I'm deeply honored to have been considered for Chapter 8 of her second book, What Space Got to Do with It. Shelley, thank you very much. Yeah, that's a book. For being with us today at Charlas Spaceport MX. It's truly an honor to have you here. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Katie. And thank you to Charlas Spaceport MX. It's truly an honor to be part of this conversation and this incredible community. If I were to describe my journey, I'd say it's about three chapters. It's about curiosity, it's about service and responsibility, and it's about energizing with that space mindset. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with you tonight. Thank you again for hosting me. Thank you for the back room of Oscar and the team. And thank you for all who are calling in tonight.
Oh, thank you again, Shelley. It's an honor to have you here. And to begin, I'd love to take us back to the very beginning. We always do this. Tell us about yourself. Who were you as a child? Where did you grow up? What did you look to play and explore?
Well, again, thank you. And I always like to say I'm somebody who enjoys joining organizations. I'm a joiner. And I like to try new things. As a child and a young adult, I didn't see myself through a single lens. I explored broadly. I was involved in track and field, theater, business activities, community groups. What mattered to me wasn't about mastery right away, it was about learning, connecting, and seeing what was possible. Looking back, curiosity was absolutely part of who I was. But more than that, it was called experiential curiosity. I learned by doing, by showing up, by saying yes to opportunities, even when I wasn't sure where they would lead or if I would even like them. So I share with your audience, especially when you're young, you're in high school, you're in junior high, you're in college, try different things, join different organizations, volunteer, see if you like things, because by exploring and that experimental curiosity, you're going to find your pathway. And that's what I did too. I found my pathway by doing that.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Shelly. You know, we always ask to all our guests this question, and it's very interesting. When you share your own journey, we can feel more connected because most of our guests, they have always an influence in their childhood that ignites this curiosity and move them into the industry. So thank you for sharing that.
You're very welcome. And I'd like to say, I think that exploratory curiosity is what helped bring me to the space industry because space is all about curiosity. So I found my place and I found my place with you because we met several years ago doing an event.
Yeah, I remember. And I love these two concepts: explorationally and experimental curiosity. That's something that we need to remember, guys.
Mhm.
And looking back at your career, when did you realize that space could be a tool to transform far more than technology?
Well, I probably share a perspective that maybe some of your audience does because space was never part of my original plan.
Mm,
Early in my life, I genuinely believed that space was for other people, what
exactly.
some of your audience might believe. It was for scientists and engineers and astronauts. It felt distant, technical, and inaccessible. And so I admit, I never saw myself in it. But that changed during my career in the US Air Force when I became a space procurement officer. That's when I began to understand not just the technology of space, but its impact. I realized that space isn't abstract, it's infrastructure. It underpins how we communicate. Even tonight, we're using space technology to communicate. It's about how we navigate GPS, how we respond to disaster and disaster response, how economies function, financial transactions, and how societies stay connected. So, space quietly supports our everyday lives. So that is when I learned about it when I became a space acquisition officer. And I began to see that space was not only technical, but it's a powerful tool for thinking, for understanding systems, interdependencies, risk, and responsibility. And so I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to be part of the space industry and be on this incredible journey over the last 20 some years and get to meet fabulous people like you, as well as other great leaders from around the world.
Shelly, what a space acquisition officer does?
That's a great question because even today, when I found out I was going to be a space acquisition officer, I didn't want to do it because I didn't even know what it was. And most people today don't know what it is. But
Mhm.
in the military, you need people who buy things, the procurement team. So I was a program manager. So somebody could go and get a program management or a project management professional certification from Project Management Institute or get a degree or an MBA. And you could be a program manager. And program managers lead the development of major systems. So, program manager, they have a team with finance, logistics, engineering, contracting, and we developed the major space systems that you see today. So some of those are the ground systems, or they could be satellites, or they could be the rockets. So that's what space procurement is. But procurement in any industry is the people who are the buying people, and they could be many different career fields, like I said, from program management, contracting, logistics. So anybody listening today could be part of the space industry in any of those business career fields.
Wonderful. Um, through your career, you've worked across different sectors, not only military, institutional, educational, and private. And yet there's a clear coherence in your journey. So, but what is the invisible thread that connects all the worlds?
Well, the invisible thread is having that space mindset.
Mm.
So, across the military or educational or private industry, what remains consistent is not the environment, but the way of thinking that's required to navigate complex responsibilities. So, the space mindset is rooted in systems thinking, long term perspectives, and an understanding that decisions have a ripple effect far beyond the moment they're made. So, as I said, I was in space acquisition. So, I might make a decision one day that could end up having an effect 20 years later. So, it's really understanding how your decisions, like throwing a pebble into a pond, you can see the ripple effect of your decisions and how they'll translate over time. So, in space, we're trained to think holistically, to see how technology and policies and people and timing and culture all intersect as a system. That perspective doesn't just stay in orbit, though. It translates powerfully across every sector that I've worked in.
Shelly, and your experience in the Air Force and the defense involves a high risk decision making. Like you said, it's like a ripple effect. But in high risk environments, what did those environments teach you about leadership under pressure?
So, leadership under pressure taught me that calm is not a personality trait, it's a practice. Yeah, be calm. It's a practice built through training. You don't just say, I'm going to be calm. It's built through training. In the military, and especially in space and defense, you train relentlessly for scenarios you hope that never happen. You practice decision making under stress so that when pressure arrives, you're not reacting emotionally, you're falling back on preparation. And I saw the same principle through my husband Jerry's work as a firefighter. In emergency situation, there isn't time to debate or improvise wildly. You rely on your training, your discipline, and your trust in your team. That preparation creates the calm you need to lead during those challenging times.
Yeah, teamwork. That's a big, 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 big thing. But that's powerful insight, especially when these environments where the margin to for error is so small, Shelly. And we have this saying in the industry that failure is not an option. But sometimes, even you try not to fail, you're gonna fail. But
Well, I'll share in my first book, I talk about failure. And failure is just FAIL. First attempt in learning. So
whoa,
you
I love it.
practice, you learn, you repeat that, and you do it over and over. The other thing about learning that's equally important to being calm in the training is listening.
Mhm.
No leader operates alone in high stakes environments. We're all depending on teams, subject matter experts, and other stakeholders to surface information that can help us make better decisions. That space mindset teaches us that perspective improves when we integrate those multiple viewpoints into the system. So leaders under pressure become less about having the right answer yourself and more about creating conditions where the best possible answers can emerge through preparation, collaboration, and trust.
Even though we talk about preparation, collaboration, trust, is there a space for innovation in the middle of the chaos in these environments? Very hard. Is there space to balance innovation with responsibility in those moments, or it's better to attach to the procedures and just try to save the situation? What role plays innovation?
So I think that can be misunderstood about innovation. In high stakes environment, innovation doesn't mean moving fast and breaking things. We hear some people say that we're going to move fast and break things, but it really means designing intelligently, learning continuously, and making informed incremental progress. So when I was in the Air Force leading those development of those big space systems, we called it spiral development. You would build a little bit, you would test a little bit, you would learn, you would build. You do the same with your learning. You have to crawl before you walk, before you run. So for me, the balance comes from three main principles. First, we have to have clarity of purpose. Innovation must serve a clearly defined mission. If you're not clear on your why, speed becomes dangerous. And why is also if you're an entrepreneur. What sometimes people say I want to be an entrepreneur. Okay, why? Everything starts with the why. That clarity of your purpose. Why do you want to do something? Secondly, we need to have that systems awareness. Every innovation affects people, processes, and downstream outcomes. And then third, we have to have a learning loop. So I'll let you think about that. I'll have a little sip because I got a frog.
No, no, no. I can imagine that even in our everyday, in our daily life, if we don't have clear what are we doing, we're gonna spend more time. We're gonna even lose money trying to get something done. No, but I really like this idea of connecting clarity with our purpose and defining our mission. That I saw that very often in the entrepreneurship world. We want to sell something, we want to build a company, but what's the purpose, what's the mission? We don't even start with the mission and the vision when we create companies. So systems also is when you add the systems, you now are ready to go. But sometimes we start because we are moving by the emotion or by something, dreaming in something, but we don't have clear where is our mission. So I really like these three important points.
Absolutely. You got to start with the why. And there's a great Simon Sinek, for those of you who've heard of him or can Google him. He has a TEDx out called Start with the Why. And I think whether you're an entrepreneur, you're figuring out your journey, because after all, you are the CEO of your life. So what is your purpose? And your purpose can change. But that's one of the first things I do when I talk to proteges is, have you done a SWOT analysis? What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Where do you want to go? What do you want to accomplish? And so starting with that why. So I share that with your listeners. You can Google Simon Sinek, start with the why. And then we think about that systems awareness, that everything you do, every action will have that ripple effect on people, processes, and the downstream. So if you take a class and you learn something, you're taking time, you're investing in one opportunity. When you take a class, you can't do something else. So, but what will that class allow you to do down the road? Does that class allow you to get a better job or learn some skills you need as an entrepreneur? Um, or do some other things, maybe be a writer. And then the learning loop. We constantly need to be learning. We're learning all the time how much artificial intelligence, all the tools that are out there for us, all the new technology we can capture. And so, as those leaders, we need to be thinking about what's our why? How does that systemically, through systems awareness, interact with things? And then always be learning.
Wonderful. There's no space for failure with that system.
Oh,
Thank you.
we can it's okay to fail. Even SpaceX failed. I loved your video in the beginning. SpaceX had many failures. The difference is they learned from every failure, they moved quickly, and they learned from those lessons so they didn't make the same mistake again.
Yeah, that's why agile programs and systems are based, right? So let's talk about now the book. Let's start with talking about the book. What space
Mhm.
got to do with it? And the title of your book asks questions that many people are probably thinking right now. Shelli, can you tell us the exact moment that made you think this book must exist?
Well, the exact moment was I was preparing for a TEDx talk. And my speaker coach was struggling with, what do we call your talk? Because when you talk about a lot of space, it's very abstract and it can be hard for people to really grasp what it is. And he goes, I know. What space got to do with it? And that question and that title really captured what I've been articulating in my talk, how space is really part of everything we do. It's part of leadership, it's part of innovation, it's part of communication. And so I was able to take that space mindset, what space got to do with it, and then craft it into some books. And the other part I say is through the process of mentorship. I know you're an amazing mentor and you've helped several proteges. But one of the questions many of the mentors would ask me is, have you written this down? Like I would coach them and then they'd say, wow, that's really good. Do you have a book? And so what it made me realize, what space got to do with it? And we need to be writing this down. And when you really think about it, that is our job as leaders. It's not just making the decisions and moving things forward, it's also about writing it down and capturing it so it can be there for the next generation. And so that's the real purpose of the books, is to help other people find their pathway, make their decisions, create the life they want.
And you did it in a great, perfect way because the book it has many stories, so we can reflect ourselves, our life story in others. So that's one of the things that I really love about your books. And I want to shift gears a little bit aquí. For those of us who aren't in the space sector, how can we take the ideas from your book and actually apply them into our daily life, work, or leadership?
So that is exactly why I designed the book. And it's a series. It's called What Space Got to Do with It series, and it's about personal growth, professional development, and strategic leadership. So you can think about professional or personal growth as young professionals, junior high, high school, college, early careers. Professional development is about that professional acumen and navigating your career, especially up and through mid career. And then I'll have the third book coming out this year, and it will be Out of This World Leadership. And it's really about that strategic leadership. And I love how you highlighted. So each book, so two of them are out, and you can find them on Amazon, or they are available globally. Because I know in Mexico they're on Kindle, but
Yes.
you can also get them on Barnes and Noble. So they're on many outlets, Rakuten and more. But what's great about the book is, as you said, for each book, I interviewed 30 global thought leaders. So it's not just my perspective. And I interviewed people like yourself, but also I interviewed people who are not in the space industry, former
Yeah.
presidents of countries, men and women, all ages, all regions of the world, so that not only do you hear my story and the lesson and the insight, but you hear these other stories so that maybe you could say, well, that applies to me. I had one young woman in Africa ask me, do you think I could be in the space industry? And I was like, absolutely. If you check out my first book, I have several great stories from people from Cameroon, Kenya, all over the world that have made it into the space industry or made it to the United States or made it into the industry they want to be in. And you can too. And so this way, not only can you learn about the insights about navigating your journey, but you can also maybe find a role model that you could follow and see what their journey was and learn more from them. And of course, all the individuals like yourself that I interviewed, they have podcasts and interviews and articles that can help people continue to further their development and growth.
Yeah, that's totally true. And you have worked with leaders across the globe in many cultural contexts, as you said, with Africa and Latin America, and of course, the United States, Europe. And I would like to love to hear your perspective and from your experience, your global experience. What potential do you think do you see in regions like Latin America? And this question, I want to connect it with this idea that we think that the space is not for us. It's not just concept that we have as person, but also as countries, especially in underdeveloped countries or countries that don't have the biggest budgets that have the NASA or the other space agencies around the world. So we have this idea that space is not for Latin America because we don't have a space program or we don't have astronaut programs. But now in this new area of the new space, what future do you see for Latin America within this construction of the innovation ecosystem for us?
Well, that's an excellent question. And what really excites me about regions like Latin America is the combination of talent, creativity, and context driven innovation. So, across my global work, I've seen that innovation doesn't come from copying models. So, not everyone needs to be like the United States or like China and have launch ports and astronauts and all these things. What people need to have is they need to solve real problems in their local environment. And Latin America has a deep understanding of resistance, resourcefulness, and community based solutions, which are incredibly valuable qualities in a complex, interconnected world. So, example, what are some things that space could do that help people in your communities? Well, some of them could be agriculture, getting better forecasting from satellites. Some of it might be better weather prediction or watching your fisheries. Or, in Chile, they have mines, so it could help the mining industry. So, yes, there can be lots of opportunities to have a launch facility like Brazil, but it can also be how can you use the space technology, the data that's already coming from the satellites for financial fintech, telecommunications, um, agriculture,
Okay.
fisheries, earth observation. And I know you know all these things because these are things that you teach, the wonderful abundance of that space information. And so, what's really exciting about regions is their ability to connect locally these changes in the global opportunities. When you can connect a community that might be remote. I've been doing some leadership classes to Togo in Africa, and many of the entrepreneurs I'm working in are now realizing through space technology and their phones, they can create a business. They can look at creating products and services that could be global. And they didn't realize that existed before. And that's the same thing in Latin America. with space technology and the opportunities, they can be endless. But the most important thing is that they are locally needed for the people and the citizens of Latin America, that make their lives better, that help their citizens, that make their communities and their future generations have a good and prosperous economy and life.
I really like that answer, Shelly, because uh, it makes us think out of the box. So it's going to be hard for our countries to develop a space program or to be suddenly in the space exploration career that now that is like that this what is the ecosystem that is already done around the world, but we can skip that part and go directly to the downstream applications of the technologies. So that's great. And I'm excited about that because it's a place where Latin Americans, we're good with innovation, and we are resourceful, as you said, and we have
Absolutely.
many problems in water management, agriculture, in air observation. We don't have big programs. So thank you very much for that. And now we are inspired now with this conversation, and especially now I want to talk about women that are defining leadership today. What qualities have you observed in women, especially that the qualities that are defining leadership today, especially in these traditionally male-dominated sectors?
Excellent. Well, the first thing I want to highlight is, as you said, my book has 4 sections: leadership, awareness, access, and action. And there are women's stories in every one of those. But chapter 1 in my book is about leadership. And it's that leadership begins long before you have a title. Katie, you were a leader long before you became the CEO of Spaceport MX. You were a leader long before that. I have your story. It's incredible. So it begins with how we see the world and our role within it. So while this question highlights women, I want to be clear that the leadership principles I work with apply to everyone. I mentor and coach both men and women across sectors and cultures, and these qualities consistently show up in effective leaders regardless of gender. So many women who are redefining leadership today lead with a strong sense of perspective and responsibility. They understand that leadership isn't just about making a decision, but it's about understanding the broader systems those decisions affect. So the people, the processes, the culture, the long term outcomes. That way of thinking aligns closely with what we call the space mindset. Another insight from chapter 1 in my book is that effective leadership is contextual. We just talked about leadership in Latin America because of the challenges and opportunities may be a slightly different than elsewhere. So strong leaders know how to adjust their approach based on the situation or the location, the mission, and the people involved. I see this adaptability in many of the leaders I work with, knowing when to listen, when to bring others into the conversation, and when decisive action needs to be taken. So, chapter 1 also emphasizes leadership as a practice, not a position. The best leaders, women and men alike, are committed to continuously learning. If you talk to many leaders out there, they'll tell you all the books they have on their reading list. They tell you about the things they're doing. So, leaders, they're seeking feedback, they're asking questions. How can they be better? How could they approach things better? They value diverse expertise, and they create environments where trust and collaboration strengthen outcomes. So, ultimately, what's evolving isn't who can lead, but how leaders show up. As complexity increases, we're in a very complex world with artificial intelligence, quantum, space, and other emerging technologies. So, as this complexity increases, the leaders who succeed will be those who lead with perspective, adaptability, and systems awareness. These are universal leadership qualities, and they can benefit everyone.
Wonderful. Yeah. Perspective, responsibility, adaptability, systems awareness. Wow. Yeah. We need to work hard.
Yeah.
Now, let's look forward for a moment. Why do you believe this space mindset is so relevant for the future of work and collaboration?
So, as we can imagine, with all this complexity we're seeing in the future with artificial intelligence and quantum, the future of work is definitely defined by complexity and interdependence. We don't see silos. We need to break those silos down. So, we're collaborating across disciplines, cultures, time zones, and technologies in ways we've never seen before. I just came back from the Consumer Electronics Show last week in Las Vegas, and you could see all the artificial intelligence, all the partnerships. Lenovo is partnering with NVIDIA, NVIDIA is partnering with someone else. So they're all partnering together. So that space mindset is relevant because it teaches us to think in systems. In space, every component is connected, and success depends on understanding how the people, technologies, and timing all interact. And that same reality now defines how organizations operate.
But it sounds wonderful, but as humans, we also have trouble to collaborate. And do you have any recommendations or tips for improve our collaboration skills? Because sometimes we have fear that if we share this and we share that, the other person have more resources, economical resources, and we can develop faster my program, or even in the industry, there's a secrecy for a reason, right? That you have to protect your idea, you have to protect your products, but sometimes that's an obstacle for collaboration. But what do you see that works better to break that barrier and feel more free to collaborate without that sensation that you can lose something?
So I think when you think about networking, and we do talk about that in chapter 9, networking, the importance of networking, it's also built on trust.
Trust.
So obviously, trust underlines the relationships we have in life. Whether you're a leader, a follower in a company, education, you trust your professor, you're the student, or the professor trusts the students. So it's really relationships are built on trust. And how do you build those? It takes time. It takes mutual understanding. Like you and I have known each other. Oh my goodness, has it been maybe 5 years now?
Yeah.
And we started because we were both on a virtual conference together, and we had a
Yes.
wonderful discussion. And then we kept in touch. We maintained and built that relationship of trust and respect. And we found more ways to collaborate. And then will you be in my book? And you, so what most people need to understand is that networking is not going into a room and collecting 100 business cards.
Yes.
Networking is it goes back to that beginning of what is the why?
Mhm.
I went to the Consumer Electronics Show. For me, it wasn't about collecting hundreds of business cards, but it was really about who are the people I can meet at CES and collaborate with and build a relationship and a partnership for the future. And so you don't have to meet 100 people. Maybe you just need to meet one or two people. And so once you can start building trust, then you can start creating opportunities together. And, for legal purposes, you could create memorandums of understanding or contracts, but your
And
foundation is the relationship of trust. I think you're amazing, Katie. I love working with you. I look forward to joining you on more programs and opportunities, whether virtually or in person, because we've built a relationship of trust. And whether we have a piece of paper, a contract, an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, those are all parts of business as well, and those are okay. So, as a speaker, I absolutely expect to have a speaking contract with an organization that hires me. So, your relationships can certainly be followed by forms of contractual agreements because you are in a business. And so that's part of it if you're in a business. Now, if these are personal relationships and you're looking for mentors and coaches, well, what do you want to get out of those mentors and coaches? What are you hoping they can help you solve? Starting with the why, what do you want? Uh, how can that coach then help you? Because not every coach or mentor is the right coach for you. And so
Yes.
you have to know who can help you and do your research. So I always do that when I meet people. I'm more of a life coach and I want to get to know you. And most of the times when I coach or mentor people, it's about a year-long process, meeting one, maybe two times a month, because it's more of a long-term, that systems level, long-term thinking. But if you're somebody who's looking, how do I get into a PhD program? I may not be the right coach for that. Well, I'm not. But there are several other people I know who are really good at coaching young professionals and finding PhD programs. So know yourself, and then know who can help you find what you want, and then most importantly, communicate that so that people know how you want them to help.
Wonderful. Wow. Yes, that clear. Now to wrap up this conversation, what does space have to do with the future of humanity? Everything.
Everything. It's like physics. It's everything. But space reminds us of something essential. And again, I said it. No one goes to space alone. For every one astronaut that goes to space, there are thousands of people on Earth that made that mission happen. So when you look at Earth from space, borders disappear. And
Mhm.
what becomes visible instead is our shared responsibility to one another and to the systems that sustain life. That perspective changes how we think about leadership, innovation, and progress. So, space teaches us humility and long term thinking. The technologies we develop for space support life on Earth. Every day we're using space technology, whether you know it or not, but the mindset behind them is even more important. It asks us to consider not just what we can do, but what should we do, and how our choices today will affect future generations. So ultimately, space has everything to do with our future, not because we're all leaving Earth.
Mhm.
Everybody thinks we're leaving to go to Mars, and some may, but because the way we think in space helps us become better collaborators, better stewards of our planet, and better leaders for one another. So if we carry that perspective forward, we don't just expand frontiers, we strengthen humanity itself.
Yes. And in this, in our way to explore and make space habitable for the future, we have learned a lot, and we have developed technologies that now are helping us to live better here, to reduce the pollution here. So, of course, it has to be with the future of humanity, because with these learned lessons, we can improve our life, our quality life on Earth. So, we have a better future, because if we go the way we're going now, there's no future, even if we don't go to space or we don't think about space, because there's time to change.
And again, it's not for us. It's for the
Yes.
next and the next and the next and the next generation. So that systems thinking about how a decision today will have that ripple effect to affect people and your children's children's children that you may never even meet.
Yeah, that's why to have a clear idea of our mission and purpose is very important, because we are culture changers. So we're thinking uh, far beyond our present and what we can do in our personal mission, but it's more than that. Thank you, Shelly. There's always a philosophical way to think about space, right? This, when you start thinking about the future and humanity and all that involves to move in this sector, it's always like you start thinking about yourself. So thank you for bringing that to the conversation also.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
And before we say goodbye, wow, we have a question, Shelly. Shelly, Carlos Apodaca. Hey, Carlos. Carlos is in Mexicali, in California, Baja California. I still don't know how you inspire, write, travel, and have time for yourself. How you do that, Shelly? It's a very very good question.
Well, I think it starts with that beginning, and it's in the first book, that SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then prioritizing things. So what I do is I
Mhm.
do have a vision board in my office where I put up, what are my priorities for that year? What do I want to accomplish? How many trips do I want to have? A book, and then and then you figure out the big things you want to accomplish, and then you can figure out what are the other things you can do. So it really starts with knowing yourself, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, knowing your why. What do you want to accomplish this year? And how does this year tie into your 5 year, 10 year, 20-year plan? And then breaking those goals down. So that's what I do. I always had planned that I would go to the Consumer Electronics Show, and it is challenging to go that first week of January. But you work it into your schedule. And then I've worked in when I'll start working on my next book. And then for those of you who may not know, I will be a team project chair for International Space University for their summer program called their Space Studies program that will take place in Strasbourg, France this summer. So I'll be doing that as well. So I'm always looking at things, but again, you prioritize your time. And then the other thing you have to learn is the things you've said yes to will mean you will have to say no to other things. And maybe it's not no forever, but it's not right now. So if somebody comes now and says, "Can you do this?" But I know I'm already going to be in Strasbourg, France for International Space University, I thank them and say, maybe we can do that next year. So you have to keep in mind that when you say yes to one thing, it means you may have to say no to some other things.
Knowing your whys, prioritizing, and choosing wisely.
Choosing wisely. Yes.
Thank you, Shelly. Let me see if we have another one. From your global perspective, what are the main cultural, educational, or institutional barriers that prevent Latin America from fully participating in the space industry? And what concrete steps could begin to be taken today to change that reality? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's a tough one because we say Latin America, but Latin America is a lot of countries.
Mhm. Yeah.
So in my book, I have one amazing person from Chile, Priscilla. And, one of the challenges she faced is when she was getting a PhD, Chile didn't even have a job for her for that degree. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of challenges, but what she did is she found those networks. She joined the Mars Society in Chile. She started networking with other people in space, and then now she's working at ALMA, um, which is the big
Yeah.
antenna array in Chile. But so she found her way. So I think what you have to do is, what are you passionate about? And when you do that SWOT analysis, what are the opportunities out there and what are the threats? Some of the threats, like Priscilla, she was getting a degree that her country didn't have a job. So she had to take a risk that either her country would develop enough that there would be a job for her in the future, or would she have to move somewhere else? So I do know some people who have moved to Europe to be part of some European programs as well, or they've come to the US. I know people in Africa have the same challenge. So I think what we have to do is there's multi-pronged approach, and the first place it starts is by bringing leaders together, especially policy leaders, because policy leaders understand what the country and the society and all the stakeholders need. And again, we need to break it down beyond just Latin America, because South Central, Panama is very different than Colombia, is very different than Brazil, other than just a language. And so we need to really look at those, but it starts with those policymakers bringing in industry, bringing in academia, and having conversations about how do we create a system, like, remember, systems applied approach. If we wanted to grow, maybe not just the space industry, but we want to grow emerging technology that will benefit our citizens. Now, space will be part of it because space is the infrastructure that runs a lot of this technology. Whether you know it or not, it's the infrastructure. But then it starts with, okay, we want to have this technology in our country. So these are the courses and the types of schools we need to design, and work with Spaceport MX to design the curriculum that's needed to create the workforce that will fill those jobs, that will attract employers to create those businesses. So it's a really systems level thinking. And each country, even each community, really needs to think of it in that, how does it help your citizens in that location better their quality of lives? That's what it really comes down to.
And you know what, Shelley, in this vacuum of opportunities that Priscilla felt in Chile, there's also big opportunities because nothing is done. We have to build everything from the beginning. So there's also a big way to start creating all those opportunities for obviously the next generation. Maybe we're not young enough to enjoy that, but it's also a way to create those opportunities.
Absolutely.
Ay, ay, ay. Okay. Isabel Juarez, do you have any advice for young people who are studying and pursuing their own hobbies and how to manage their time if they want to start innovation projects?
Oh, that's great.
Mhm.
Well, I think that's wonderful. So what type, I can't, Isabel, what are your hobbies? How do they intersect with innovation? Sometimes like Spaceport MX has rockets, or you do other challenges, or there's other, like in Brazil, I know they have like an analog astronaut
Mhm.
uh, program as well. So depending what your hobby is, you could do some research and think about how could that intersect with innovation. A lot of people don't know that space is part of um, biohealth or energy storage, cybersecurity, robotics, artificial intelligence. So when I start telling, well, you could be in the space industry and do robotics or do healthcare applications, then they're like, oh, I didn't know these things. So Isabel, what I would say is kind of do a market research. That's another. So once you know your why, let's do some market research. The internet is a great thing. What are you excited about? What are you passionate about? Maybe there are some groups you could join, like my friend Priscilla in Chile.
Mhm.
She was getting that degree in a career that didn't even exist in Chile, but she found her people when she started joining the people from the Mars Society Chile. She started networking and learning from those people in space, and that ignited her passion for space. So I share with you that there's a lot of organizations that some are in person, but many are virtual. So even for space, there's Space Generation Advisory Council. So they have a person usually in every country. They do in person as well as virtual events. They have scholarships that can help you go to some of the space conferences. They have mentoring programs. So you might be able to find, whether it's space, you didn't say if you like space or not, but maybe you can find one of those type of organizations, a nonprofit, and you could volunteer and you could get to know people and you could learn about how your passion and your hobby could become that innovation project.
Excellent. Thank you, Shelley. And before we say goodbye, one quick question, lightning round. Is there a book, film, or podcast besides Space for MX Charlas that has inspired you recently and that you recommend?
Well, one book I often return to and that I recommend in chapter 10 of my book is
Mhm.
The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Coelho, yes.
And what resonates with me is how it captures the idea that growth is a journey shaped by curiosity, courage, and learning along the way. It reminds us that success, it isn't a destination. It's about paying attention to the lessons we encounter as we move forward every day. That message aligns closely with the space mindset. So, whether you're in space, leadership, or life, progress comes from staying open, trusting the process, and being willing to learn from every experience.
Thank you, Shelley, for sharing. I really like that book. You're right.
Yeah.
It's a good recommendation.
Yes.
And Shelley, where can our audience connect with you and follow your work?
Absolutely. Well, the best place to start is always my website, shellybrunswick.com. And then I'd encourage people to follow me on LinkedIn or Substack, where I post things regularly, as well as a newsletter. And I also have some great videos on YouTube. Many of them are with interviews with amazing leaders like yourself for my What Space Got to Do with It series. And I'm also very active on Instagram, X, and Facebook.
thank you. So there's so many ways to reach Shelli. So thank you, Shelli, for sharing your story, your vision, and your clarity with our community. Today, we're reminded of something essential. Thinking big isn't about escaping reality. Like you said, we're not going anywhere, not yet. It's about understanding it deeply enough to transform it responsibly. Thank you to everyone who joined us today at Charlas Spaceport MX. Thank you, Shelly. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity and this amazing conversation with you and your community. Until next time, I'm Shelli Brunswick, and I look forward to seeing you around the galaxy.
We'll see you around the galaxy, Shelly. Thank you to everyone who joined us today at Charlas Spaceport MX. We'll see you in our next conversation where we'll continue exploring how space doesn't just expand frontiers, but also ways of thinking. Good night.
Good night. Adios.
Adios.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.